Over the past 2 decades, China's navy has grown from strength to strength, both in size and capabilities. It's become the second most powerful navy in the world, but it's ahead of the US in terms of number of ships, and that gap is increasing due to China's far greater shipbuilding capacity. However, in terms of raw power, the US still holds a significant lead, especially when it comes to its submarines and particularly its fleet of aircraft carriers. China's latest aircraft carrier, the Fujian, was meant to narrow the gap considerably. However, as recent reporting from a Chinese military blogger revealed, the Fujian has a fatal flaw that puts it at a serious disadvantage even against US aircraft carriers half a century older than it. Let's take a closer look at the Fujian, its Achilles heel, and what it tells us about the naval arms race between the US and China going forward. To be sure, on paper, the Fujian is arguably the most advanced naval vessel yet fielded by the Chinese Navy. Some analysts might instead point to the Sichuan as the pinnacle of that country's naval innovation. This 850-foot-long vessel, launched in December 2024 at the Hudong shipyard just outside Shanghai, is an amphibious launching ship capable of transporting 1,000 Marines and ferrying them to shore via a combination of medium and heavy lift helicopters and Type 726 Mustang hovercraft. But it's also a drone carrier, fitted with electromagnetic aircraft launch catapults, or EMALS, capable of sending fixed-wing aircraft aloft, and 3 rows of arresting gear to safely recover them after flight. It's undoubtedly an innovative ship, and the US doesn't have anything comparable in its armada at this point. However, in terms of size, power, and capabilities, the Fujian is a different scale of beast. In late September 2025, the Chinese Navy published footage of the 9th and final sea trials of the Fujian, demonstrating its ability to launch and recover aircraft from its first catapult-equipped aircraft carrier. The footage shows new Chinese J-35 naval stealth fighters, J-15T carrier-based fighters, and KJ-600 airborne early warning and control aircraft being prepared for catapult launch, taking off, and then making arrested recoveries. The aircraft are also shown in flight, including in formation with a J-15D series electronic warfare aircraft, with the Fujian shown from above, with the 3 different types of aircraft arranged on its deck. The footage attracted widespread attention and praise from foreign media, with prominent US military journal The War Zone calling it a stunning leap forward, and suggesting that revealing all 3 aircraft in action at once is something of a coup. Analyst Ben Lewis told USNI News, the news website of the US Naval Institute, that the Fujian's test was a significant milestone for the Chinese military's carrier program. The Chinese were, of course, quick to crow about the milestone as well. Chinese military affairs expert Zhang Junsh stated that with the Fujian's latest breakthrough, China is becoming a major aircraft carrier power, with both the carrier and its aircraft achieving world-class in key metrics. Han Wei, a professor at the PLA's Naval Aviation University, added that the PLA Navy will also have greater confidence in safeguarding maritime rights and interests and carrying out missions on the far seas. On the face of it, it's easy to understand the enthusiasm. The only other aircraft carrier in the world to feature an EMALS system is the US Navy's flagship carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, which successfully tested its EMALS system back in 2022. However, the Ford, which, as we'll see a little later in the video, is superior to the Fujian in many ways, yet has to date been unable to launch a stealth fighter jet with an EMALS system, like the Fujian has now demonstrated with the J-35. Indeed, as the War Zone points out, due to ongoing issues with the US's carrier-based F-35C version of its legendary 5th-generation fighter, it's unclear when exactly the Ford might be able to emulate the Fujian's feat. That's not the only impressive detail about the Fujian, which is China's 3rd aircraft carrier, the first carrier designed and built entirely domestically, and a large step up from its first 2. The first, the Liaoning, was launched in 2012, originally an unfinished, rusting hull acquired from a Ukrainian shipyard. In 1998, it was finally completed at a shipyard in Dalian. China's second carrier, Shandong, launched in 2019, was built as a copy of Liaoning and demonstrated that China could build carriers on its own. Fujian, launched in 2022, proved China could not only build, but design, carriers of its 5010. However, the two ships fall significantly behind their U.S. peers, the U.S. Navy's 100 Nimitz-class carriers, despite most of these being built decades earlier. The first of the class, USS Nimitz, was launched on May 13, 1972. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower followed the USS Nimitz in 1977, marking the second ship of the class. Next came the USS Carl Vinson in 1982, the USS Theodore Roosevelt in 1986, the USS Abraham Lincoln in 1989, the USS George Washington in 1992, the USS John C. Stennis in 1995, the USS Harry S. Truman in 1998, the USS Ronald Reagan in 2003, and finally the USS George H. W. Bush in 2009. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the first of the new class of Ford carriers that shares its name, was launched on October 11, 2013. Besides having almost 4 times as many aircraft carriers as China, the US fleet also has several distinct advantages over its Chinese analogs. The first big difference is in the propulsion systems. All of America's aircraft carriers are nuclear-powered, while the two Liaoning-class carriers are conventionally powered, utilizing oil-fired boilers and steam turbines for propulsion. The Liaoning is powered by steam turbines driven by 8 kV G4 boilers, while the Shandong uses a similar conventional propulsion system, derived from the Soviet-designed engines originally installed on the Liaoning, according to Matthew Funial, a senior fellow in the China Power Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. That means Nimitz carriers can operate for decades without refueling, while China's conventionally powered carriers need frequent refueling, limiting their range and endurance. A second major advantage that the Nimitz class flat tops hold over their Chinese peers is in their aircraft launch systems. As Funial puts it, the Nimitz class uses a steam-powered catapult system, also known as Katabar, that allows aircraft to take off fully fueled and armed, maximizing their combat effectiveness. By contrast, Liaoning and Shandong rely on ski jump ramps, which restrict aircraft takeoff weight and drastically reduce their fuel and weapons load. This limits both the range and firepower of Chinese carrier-based aircraft. The Nimitz class's CATOBAR system allows the ships to accelerate aircraft to over 250 km per hour, or about 155 miles per hour, meaning that the Reagan, for example, has a maximum takeoff weight of 45 tons, 60% more than the Shandong's 28 tons. The Chinese carriers also only have about 2/3 the displacement of a Nimitz carrier. The Liaoning and Shandong displace between 60,000 to 70,000 tons, with the Shandong slightly heavier than the Liaoning at approximately 66,000 to 70,000 tons. In comparison, the Nimitz class carriers displace around 100,000 tons, a full load, making them significantly larger than both Chinese carriers. That limits how many aircraft they can embark, what kind of aircraft they can